Okay, are you ready? Okay, great. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache?
Here.
Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Voigt?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Here.
And Mayor Newton.
Here. Please join for the flag salute.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join in a moment of silence in recognition of our men and women serving in our nation and our first responders. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with our acceptance of financial reports. I move the bills, claims, and vouchers and statements of funds on hand as of August 31st, 2016 be accepted as submitted.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Approval of minutes. I move that the Village Council minutes of July 13th, 2016 have been reviewed by the Village Council and are now available in the Village Clerk's office be approved as submitted.
I'll second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Okay. We're going to have a few proclamations this evening. We'll be starting with Councilman Boyd reading a Fire Prevention Week proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Village of Ridgewood is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our town, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are in locations where people are at greatest risk from fire, and whereas cooking is a leading cause of home fires and home fire injuries, while heating equipment and smoking are the leading causes of home fire deaths, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection, education, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood residents are responsible to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes, and whereas the residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, and whereas the 2016 Fire Prevention Week theme, Don't Wait, Check the Date, replace smoke fire alarms every 10 years, is all about keeping the residents of the Village of Ridgewood, their families, and their community safer from fire through educational material and tip sheets on the leading causes of home fires, life-saving technologies, and the importance of home escape planning. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim the week of October 9th, 2016 through October 15th, 2016 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the village, and we urge all residents to protect their homes and families by heeding the important safety messages of Fire Prevention Week 2016.
Great. Thank you, Councilman Boyd. Councilwoman Walsh will be reading Gold Star Mother's Day.
Whereas the United States of America, through its armed forces, has had many heroes who have defended the lives and liberties of all their fellow Americans, and whereas many of these heroes have lost their lives in order to defend the virtues of our hard-won liberty and security, and whereas the parents, spouses, and children of these fallen heroes, known as America's Gold Star mothers and families, are aware of the exceptional spirit of service which their military family members possessed, which led them to protect and preserve the freedoms which we as Americans enjoy every single day. And whereas these Gold Star families have the courage and strength to comfort other families, support veterans, and give back to their communities. And whereas the Congress of the United States by Senate Joint Resolution 115 of June 23, 1936, has designated the last Sunday in September as Gold Star Mother's Day. And whereas Marine parents began an initiative several years ago to encourage Americans to light a luminary on Gold Star Mother's Day. And whereas on the evening of Sunday, September 25th, 2016, the Village of Ridgewood will observe Gold Star Mother's Day in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square by placing luminaries on the outskirts of the park to honor and acknowledge the mothers and families of our fallen heroes. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, in recognition of this event, does hereby proclaim Sunday, September 25th, 2016, as Gold Star Mother's Day in the Village of Ridgewood, and does hereby encourage all Ridgewood residents to light a luminary at their homes in honor and recognition of the families of the fallen soldiers throughout the United States of America. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to make one comment about Gold Star Mother's Day. If anybody has maybe never attended, it's a fabulous ceremony. And the guest speaker this year, the Gold Star family member, has been actually a family friend of ours since I was 4 years old. And I met him just after his father was killed in Vietnam. And our families have been tied together for all these years. And learning as a child the fact that somebody's parent was killed in a war, is very impactful. So I'm actually, pleased that he's going to be the speaker, but I think coming to this and listening to what these families have to say and what they have to live with, really everybody should try to make an effort to be there and at least light a luminary at your house if you can't make there, but come and actually listen to what's said and honor them with us.
Thank you. It's a beautiful evening as well.
Yep.
With that, Councilman Hache will read National Breast Cancer Awareness Week proclamation.
Whereas the Village of Ridgewood values the health of all its citizens, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood supports awareness of diseases such as breast cancer, which affects the lives of its citizens, and whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas the National Breast Cancer Awareness Month educates women about the importance of early detection for breast cancer, and whereas since the inception of National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, mammography use has doubled and breast cancer death rates have declined. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood would like to promote the use of mammography as the best available method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer, and whereas breast cancer deaths could decline further if all women aged 40 and older receive mammograms at regular intervals. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood urges all women and their families in the Village of Ridgewood to get the facts about mammography and proclaims October 2016 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as we rededicate ourselves to the pursuit of new and better ways to prevent, detect, and treat this devastating disease in the Village of Ridgewood.
Thank you. So we just wanted to make a brief announcement, very in keeping with the proclamation that Councilman Hache just read. Oftentimes we have our residents come to our meetings, sometimes the same faces, week in and week out. The same folks email us week in and week out, and whether we agree or disagree, we always appreciate the fact that you're here. I don't know if I'm going to get through this, so. One of our regular residents who just attended a meeting a few weeks ago, she was in a wheelchair and her husband spoke on her behalf, Megan Shevlin, lost her battle with breast cancer last Friday. Megan often attended meetings and always emailed in the most thoughtful, respectful, and supportive manner. Hers is a voice I will miss and a face I will miss every day. I hope you'll keep Megan and her family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. And with that, we'll take comments from the public.
Each person is limited to 5 minutes.
My name's Yana Diorio. I live at 23 Christopher Place, and I'm here.
Wait, hold on. Bring the microphone up and start again. Thanks.
Yana Diorio from 23 Christopher Place. And on that note, I'm actually here to invite you to the Good Life Ridgewood Wellness Festival, which is taking place in Memorial Park on September 25th from 11 to 3. This is conceived as part of the Mayor's Wellness Campaign last year. We had over 60 vendors, and over 800 people attend. This year, we hope to have a lot more. The entire point of the festival is to highlight not only the businesses in Ridgewood that provide wellness, but then to make Ridgewood a destination for wellness, not only for the people that live here, but for other people to come here. We have entertainment, we have dancers, we have cheerleaders, we have free yoga class at 11. The mayor will be speaking at 11. We have 300 tote bags for the first people who show up. And we have these great Good Life Ridgewood car magnets. You might have seen them last year. They were like this. They've been redesigned. Anyone who wants one can pick them up at the stable. And that's it. I hope you all come. It's just a great event to kind of bring everybody together and have some fun.
So thank you. We're really excited about that. Oh, and we get magnets. Thank you. All right. We'll just take one. Go on over here, take a few. Take one. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. My name is Andy Silverstein. I'm with Harvest Restaurants. Our restaurant is Roots Steakhouse right down the street here. I've spoken before at one of these meetings, a couple other meetings. We had the big one at Ridgewood High School and about the whole parking thing and all. And I just want to say thank you for letting me the opportunity to speak tonight and all. And I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. Obviously, we heard that valet parking was going to be on the docket tonight, or an amendment to it, so I just wanted to talk about that real quick. But before I did that, it's funny, I've spoken at these meetings a couple times, and it's funny, people have called the restaurant and said, you know, we're not going to come to Roots Steakhouse because you guys are pro the parking garage. People said, who is Andy Silverstein? And I just want to say, this is not about me, but I'm not an outsider. I grew up here for 50 years. I don't live around this area anymore. My dad owned Bonton Cleaner with Les for 50 years. He spoke at these council meetings. I just went to see him. He's in a nursing home, and you know, I feel like sometimes when I speak, and I feel like Roots were being treated as an outsider, and why I say that is, I saw that this was an amendment to valet parking, and then I saw just Chestnut Street on here, and I kind of was surprised. You know, 2 years ago when we opened up, we're the ones who started valet parking. We work closely with the town. We know a lot of people weren't thrilled with it, and we spent a lot of time and energy on it, and you know, I didn't know what to expect tonight. I'm going to sit here and listen and all, but I'm kind of surprised that nobody reached out to me or to our company and said, hey, what do you think about valet parking? And, you know, just by reading the short notes on here, I'm nervous that they're going to give us 2 spots, and we spent a lot of time. I don't know if it's a bad word to say with Roberta. It's a bad word in this building right now, but with the police department, with Roberta, and we spent a lot of energy, and I'm kind of really upset, and we're upset as a company that nobody contacted us if they're going to write down, we're going to amend valet parking, and I don't see any other street mentioned on here but Chestnut Street, where Roots Steakhouse is, that I'm upset, we're upset as a company that nobody contacted us. So I just had to say that we feel like, you know, we have like a letter on our back, like the scarlet letter on our back, and I don't know if people know, we've reached out. Ridgewood High School we're involved in the hospital, we're involved in a police department, golf outings. We've tried everything, you know, because we are kind of an outsider. I'm not an outsider, but our company is, to be involved in the community. Our building now, what we put into it, I tell you, being around this town since the 60s, there isn't a restaurant like ours. We've tried to invest in the town, and I kind of don't understand it. And I just have to say, with valet parking and seeing what's going on, it's funny. Before I worked for this company, I worked for a company for many years, and people remember where Park West is. There was a restaurant called J.B. Wimberry's, was open in 1990. I was actually the opening general manager there in 1990, and I can remember coming to these meetings and talking about parking and about valet and things like that. So again, just I'm kind of, I don't know if anybody you're allowed to or who I am to answer to, but I'm kind of surprised that nobody contacted us. And I got to be honest with you that without valet parking, we would really struggle. We stopped during the summer having it on Tuesday nights, and people just screaming at us, like, why don't you have valet parking on Tuesday night? It was just mind-blowing. So if we didn't have valet parking, it would be really tough, and we've worked really hard what we've done now to get valet and doing it the right way and all. And just one other thing that I have to say that's in my mind when I'm speaking about this is, we came to the town a year ago when we were trying to improve valet parking, and the police really worked with us, and we asked the town to fix the street lights on Chestnut Street. There's 7 street lights out on Chestnut Street, been that way for a year. There's 5 street lights out on the next street over, 5 out on Broad Street. I just feel like it's like death year sometimes things fall on. So anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you for listening, and I'll stay here if I see you want to say something, but thank you for listening. I really appreciate you listening, because I know I'm in the hospitality business, and I don't want anything confrontational. We just want to do it right, so.
So, just thank you, and we don't want anything confrontational either, I can assure you. But I don't think that this ordinance was in response to anything with your particular wonderful restaurant, having nothing to do with the parking garage, by the way. It had in response to Leon Mexican, is my understanding. So
Okay.
It doesn't impact you at all, and we're happy with your operation there. It seems to be fairly seamless. And anything relative to the lighting, if you want to shoot an email over, we're confident.
To you or to?
You can email directly to myself and CC the acting village manager, and we certainly don't want the lights to be out for a year, so we will get to that right away.
Thank
okay?
you so
So,
much.
in addition, I think this is a positive thing for you, the valet parking. It's because it's going to help on both sides of the street. So that's,
Absolutely.
I think this is a good thing for you.
I just got nervous, like I said. I heard valet park in Chestnut Street. It's been a big thing, and the money we've invested in the valet Ken Smith lot, and we're trying to do everything we can to be good partners with everybody, so.
And just as a quick question, because some of the lights are PSE&G, and I think some are the lower lights, so we'll have to distinguish.
That's what we were told, and, we were.
PSE&G.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you just email us, we'll take,
Thank you.
we'll
I will
maneuver from
email
there,
you.
okay? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for your
You're
time.
all good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. I wasn't planning on coming tonight, but I thought I would. Couple issues. Susan, I received your email today, which I believe came in at about 11 o'clock. I opened it up at 12:30. Only Ramon was CC'd on it. Dear Tony, thank you for your interest in the Central Business District Advisory Committee and for your ongoing commitment to Ridgewood. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected to serve on the CBDAC and will be formally appointed by resolution on Wednesday, September 14th, etc. This came as a surprise to me because I did not fill out the rather lengthy application. I did not submit my resume. And at the July meeting, I was summoned to the podium to give my opinion, and I congratulated Ramon for taking the effort. I also said that I would pass it by my Ridgewood Guild Board to see if anyone was interested, and at the August meeting, the answer was no, for different reasons. And I also made it clear that I would not join a committee not knowing who the players were, especially the 5 residents. There has been no communication since July by phone, email, in person, Pony Express, take your pick. So I was very surprised to get the email today.
Okay, so thank you. And I was actually surprised when I was advised that you had suggested you were interested in being on that, but if you're not interested, we're happy to remove you immediately from the resolution.
How did that come about? I made it clear at the July meeting.
I think I would allow,
Honestly, I believe that at the July meeting, you said you would most likely be the representative.
Interested, yes.
Of the
I said
guild.
I would not be, and you can go back to the July meeting, I would
will.
not play teacher, and I needed to know who the other players are,
Okay.
especially the 5 residents.
So great. You know what? We're actually looking for a collaborative effort of residents and
Okay.
business owners that are interested in working together for the betterment of the village and the central business district. But if you are so inclined to withdraw your name, we're happy to remove it from the list.
Yeah, I was quite
Yeah.
surprised to receive
Yes,
meeting
actually, I was
this morning.
surprised when I heard it. I actually thought that,
Okay.
in my view, that somebody who didn't come through the interview process and fill out the form.
Yeah,
necessarily-
somewhere the communication did not
Breakdown in
come across.
communication, sorry for any inconvenience, and we're certainly looking forward to wonderful things from the Central Business District
Sure.
Advisory Committee.
You know, I think it still has an unclear mission. I know Roberta commented that the Guild and Chamber do a lot of the events. I know Ramon commented that you're looking to mix the tenant mix, which is a good idea. However, I have been down that road in past years when I was with the Chamber, and it's really up to the jurisdiction of the landlord who to rent to, and that's why we peaked at 22 banks 10 years ago. And now the restaurants have eaten up a lot of retail space. You know, gone are the large retail stores like Drapkins, Persnickety, Laura Ashley, on and on. Our tenant mix is awful. So if you can improve on that, good luck. I wish you a lot of luck with that. Parking is not on the agenda again, and as Jim Griffith pointed out, it was not on the agenda last week. It goes on every day. I live it. I have a small business. I am not a restaurant, a nail salon, a hair salon that have 12, 15, and 20 employees. We all love the mom and pop stores. Here I am. It's me 6 days a week. I have 2 employees who work a total of 16 hours. My one employee works 2 4-hour shifts. She parked on the street after 3 hours, had her tires chalked. She said, "What does that mean?" I said, "You need to go move your car." Took her 15 minutes to find a parking space. She found it. End of story. The other employee who's newer is a Ridgewood resident. Same scenario. Do you mean I have to go park my car? What happens when I'm working an 8-hour day? Then you need to move your car twice. You need to lock the store, move your car. She did it again. She refused to do it. I said, "Kathy, you're going to get a ticket. You have to move your car." Took her 15 minutes to move the car, paid the meters to come back to complete her 45 minutes of the end of day. The parking nightmare continues. I don't see anything on the horizon to remedy the employee parking. They're still all over the streets. It's a nightmare.
So,
That's all I have
Tony,
to
I
say.
just want you to
Yes.
know, I'm a proponent of putting this on the agenda, okay, and I asked it
Okay.
to be. We actually had a discussion this morning with the Chamber of Commerce, where I also reiterated the fact that we need to put this on the agenda, because we need to measure the way to measure this is to have it constantly on the agenda and see where we're going towards this. The mayor respectfully disagrees, and you can, I guess you can ask the people up here as to what they think. I am for the parking garage. It needs to be built, okay, and we need to do it sooner rather than later. So I just want you to know there's support up here, and you just have to, you just have to get the responses from the other people up here as to how they feel about it. So, okay?
Well, thank you, because you did say that at the July meeting, and Susan, I have to say, you say you're for the parking garage, but you don't like the height, the size, the design, the location, and we have not heard anything on it, and yet I live it every day, as my fellow business owners do, and that's the reality of it. If one person works in a store an 8-hour day alone, they have to move their car twice, in the cold, in the rain, in the snow. We are the most un-customer-friendly town that offers shopping and dining, the great experience, but it's just not working. I've said this over and over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm still struggling with the acoustics. You know, it'd be great if this was there, and then we could
Wherever
talk to
you're
everybody
comfortable,
together.
it's fine, Martin.
But I hope what I'm saying is understandable behind me as well.
Your name and address?
I wanted to
Your
address...
name and address?
Name and address.
What?
Name and
Martin
address.
Walker, at 114 Cottage Place. I want to try to get a conversation going amongst all of you and amongst all of us as to where this town is headed. I'm so gratified to learn that there's so many members of this new council that have management experience, business management, both public service management experience, because it's been in the last 7 years in Ridgewood, what I've seen is a lot of conflicts between interest groups, but I haven't seen a vision of leadership coming from any authority that's responsible for the well-being of the entire town. And so, you know, we keep going back to the housing thing and the parking thing, but I think what we need to do as a community is have some sort of idea of where this community wants to be in 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years going out. I think the original design of master plans and the whole system is designed to elicit that kind of vision, but I think that what happens is we get caught up in the sort of minutia, and I was particularly, glad to hear, about the letter that was written by Jeffrey Voigt to the Planning Committee to rediscuss the density issue around, appropriate parking or floor area ratios. But the thing is, the level of analysis of this is exactly where I think we're stuck, okay? Because what's missing, and I went to a bunch of planning meetings, what's missing is planning for a human community. Okay? We don't have a vision of who our community should be in 10, 20, or 15 years. And this is really troubling to me, and what particularly the thing that's left out of the vision is who our families are that are actually the things that make up a community. Now, I may have spent too much time growing up in Latin America or living in India, but I cannot see a group of people without a family as to what it is that holds them together. And I know that our culture, we focus a lot on individuality, but the bottom line is that we have families here in Ridgewood, okay? And these families are making decisions about their economic and educational future, which are totally fixed on the leadership that comes from this council and how we move forward as a community. So there's any number of people can come here and have a different problem that they want to solve, and there'll always be somebody else who has a problem that maybe even directly, conflicts with that particular problem. But the point of visionary leadership is to find some kind of consensus as to where in the human community we want to go. Okay. Now, I've been talking about over 55 housing for ever since I got here, and I've written a lot about it and whatnot. But so, to me, there's no question in my mind that our biggest deficit in relating to the families that exist in this town is providing for their ability to stay together as a family and live in this town. Okay, and I know some people have noticed, and we've all noticed, that there is a significant cohort, right, of people in this town who do not have that as a vision. Okay, that they look at the absence of a unified community or leadership vision on having a multi-generational town, and they just think, okay, well, what is the planning for a future of a family? Well, in the East Coast, people always have Florida, right? Okay, but that's not a community. So what I'm really, hoping that you as a council and that other people in the town can really lock into this idea of how people are going to age in this thing, and whether people should age in families or should they age, on a newly built retirement home on a cornfield in Pennsylvania somewhere.
So, Martin, to your point, I completely agree with you. We need an overarching plan, not necessarily a master plan, not necessarily what's going to go on with the central business district, but we owe it to you, okay, and I think we need to do this. We owe it to you to understand where we're headed over the next 4 years and what's important to the village. And that means we have to go out to you, and this needs to happen, that means the community, and find out what are the important issues that are making you live here. Okay, I want you to live here. Those issues we should be addressing over the next 4 years. And I've mentioned this before as part of my campaign, is that this particular, let's call it a vision, we need to be accountable for that. So in other words, we should be having let's call it a state of the village address every year where we review with you exactly what we need to do as a village and what we've done as a village over the past year, and whether or not we've hit those objectives or the tasks that have been assigned to us. And that's the only way we're going to be proactive about this stuff, I think, as a village, and ensuring that what we do moving forward actually addresses your needs. So I'm completely buy into what you're saying.
Okay, let me just mention very briefly, I've shared with you, Susan, the information on futuresearch.org. There is well hammered out methodology to do exactly what you're saying.
Right.
And if there's any way that I can contribute to that, I certainly will.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Martin. Welcome.
Rorick Halliday, 374 Evergreen Place. I want to talk about a couple of things, including Shedler. I would not spend a red cent applying for a grant to preserve the house, because I'm not sure we have a house that's worth preserving. You owe it to the village to have a committee. Now, right now, it's being driven by a couple of starry-eyed romantics. Oh, preserve it, preserve it. Preserve what? Someone has to tell me, how old is the house? Is it really from the 1820s, or is a small section of it from the 1820s? I have a feeling, like many farmhouses, it's something developed over the century. And so the question becomes, how much money do you need? Do you need $1 million to restore, to get rid of all the black rot and the black mold, etc.? And then once you restore it, to do what? The Bergen County Historical Society, let them pay for it and restore it. I would not spend a penny. If you want to spend money, there was a grant at one time being spoken about the nest. Now, Ms. Knudsen is always talking so romantically about protecting the historical part of the village. Now, ground zero of the village, historical aspect of the village, is Van Nest. You have the statue for Mr. Godwin, who is a hero of the Revolution, and you have that wonderful column to honor all the people who died. Now, that column is falling apart. Now, you have the bricks. Now, the bricks basically are falling apart. It's becoming very uneven. Someone is going to trip, okay? Now, that's not a graveyard, like someone said, as if you can't even touch them. This is where I would put money, and not much money. Now, as far as Shedler, and I really feel sorry for the so-called, preserved Shedler. You know, you look at their logo. It's this beautiful, it must have been a stock photograph of Hyde Park or Central Park. This beautiful full-grown tree with this beautiful lawn leading to it. That's a joke. I mean, if people look at this and say, this is Shedler, they're either fooling themselves or they're being fooled by someone. You know, and it's no joke. You, as the leaders of the community, should stop people from trying to mislead people. The mouth organ for you, which is the village, what I call the Village Pravda, otherwise known as the village blog with all these anonymous staff. Whenever they talk about Shedler, they show a nesting bald eagle. That's a blatant lie. There hasn't been a bald eagle nesting there for a millennium. Bald eagles nest next to lakes, bodies of water. Why do people do this? Are we all fools? Shouldn't you protect the interests of the people by saying you cannot show that scene or you cannot show the nesting eagle because it's a big lie? So as far as spending money, put together a committee, and I've said that before, where you might get a historian, you might get an engineer or an architect who knows his way around restoring older buildings, and let them tell us, what does it take? A, is it worth restoring, and what does it take to restore it? And then once you restore it, what do you do with it? At one time, someone had the beautiful idea of turning it into a library for historical documents of Bergen County. You know, think about it. That's a stupid thing to say, because to use it as a library of historical documents, A, you have to reinforce the beams. You might as well just gut it and rebuild it, or you have to make it, plus you have to make it fireproof. I mean, what does it take to make it fireproof and to carry the terrible loads of all these books? People say this, oh my God, it's a fantastic idea. Why are we wasting time on this? And now we're talking about spending money on Gypsy Pond and Kings Pond. Now, I'm a big believer in these two sites being truly worth preserving. Now, I understand money will be spent, or you're looking to get a grant to rebuild the dam. You look at these things, and you're talking about, and maybe $1 million. I'm an ex-dam engineer way back. I have no idea how much it will cost.
Rurik,
But
the
yes.
the budget's already been put together for that, and it's much less than $1 million. It's
How much is it?
It's about $540,000.
But for
And
what?
it's not for the dam, it's for everything, okay? So there's a whole bunch of things that are going on at that
Okay.
particular site. The dam is but one of those issues, and it's probably it's less than $550,000. I'm happy to provide you with that information, but it's not above $1 million, okay?
Well, I tell you, I have much less of a problem with Gypsy Pond and Kings Pond than I do with Shedler, which is to me is a classic dump. Literally, it is literally a dump. Big piles of beer cans, junk. And the idea that it acts as a barrier to sound is just nonsense, if you will. Now, which raises another question. In looking at the resolution for Gypsy Pond, have there been any public hearings about that?
The public hearing for the Open Space Trust Fund grant occurs on October 5th, so I believe that that's the date we've scheduled for the public hearing, and that's when that would occur. Procedurally, there's a timeline that we will follow,
would
but
there
I'm
be
sorry,
enough
but I think
time?
your 5 minutes
Under
is up.
the old regime, there would be 2 or 3 or 4 hearings where everybody...
Not the old regime, but on the previous council, it was exactly the same thing. There's certain guidelines that legally you have to follow, but your 5 minutes was up, so
Okay,
we
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll have one last speaker, and then that's it. Good evening.
Good evening, Ann. That is Mrs. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Just wanted to start with one quick question. Mayor Knudsen, is the K in your name silent? It's Knudsen, not Knudsen, right?
Correct,
Yeah, okay,
that's correct.
I would never want to mispronounce it, Mayor
Thank you.
Knudsen.
It is silent.
Thank you. I wanted to just make a comment about the Fire Prevention Week proclamation that was read. What I wanted to say is something really in favor of our fire department. I happen to be married to somebody who has a lifelong, since he was a teenager, hobby of photographing emergency service workers, and I think most of you know that. On Sunday, I rode with him to a house fire in Ridgewood. And, they were able to contain what could have been a fire that would have completely destroyed the house. They called for mutual aid from Glen Rock and Waldwick, which have volunteer fire departments. I was talking to one of the police officers down the street, just, shooting the breeze while this was going on. And the Glen Rock truck, I may not have this exactly right, but I believe it arrived about 20 minutes later. And the Waldwick truck arrived just before that. We have a paid fire department in this town, and it is the best possible. It's not really fire prevention, but it's such an asset that we have it. I think that there may be only 3 towns in Bergen County that have paid fire departments, and I just wanted to give a shout out to them. They're the best, and hopefully nobody ever needs them, but they are there, and they're there very, very quickly when there's a fire. So thanks to all of them.
And we appreciate that, and we agree. Okay, and moving on. With that, we'll go to the manager's report.
Yes. PSE&G, I announced this last week, but this is coming up this coming Monday. They're beginning their new project this Monday, September 19th. It's part of an upgrade initiative to ensure reliable electric service in the village. The underground project begins Monday morning and will run from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Construction activities include the installation of manholes and underground pipe, and this work is expected to be completed in November 2016, weather permitting. The following is a list of the working locations: South Broad Street between Passaic Street and East Ridgewood Avenue, North Broad Street between East Ridgewood Avenue and Franklin Avenue, Franklin Avenue between North Broad Street and Chestnut Street, and Franklin Avenue and Walnut Street. The police department will work with PSE&G to minimize traffic concerns and inconvenience to the public. We expect that there will be alternating traffic and detours near the areas listed. We appreciate your cooperation during this project, and all stores and restaurants on Broad Street will be open during this construction period. There may be periods of time when certain sections of Broad Street may be closed completely, and in which case there will be detours set up. There are various community events coming up. Sunday, September 18th, noon to 5 p.m. on East Ridgewood Avenue, we have the annual street fair. Saturday, September 24th, we have free shred day between 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Ridgewood Recycling Center behind the firehouse. This is limited to Ridgewood residents, but it's a wonderful time for you to get rid of and be able to shred documents that you are confidential or you wish to destroy. And every Sunday, the farmers market is at the train station lot, and it's open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Heather, could I ask you a question as it relates to PSE&G? They seem to be having a good time tearing up our streets, and I'm just curious as to if there's a schedule as to when they're going to repave them. I can tell you just personal experience on Glen Ave, it is a mess. Yeah. And I'm worried I'm going to blow a tire. And I'm just hoping we can find out when that might be repaved so that it is drivable.
We can look into it. That's actually a county road, Glenn, so it has to do with county also, but we can look into see. Most likely, it will not be this year, and the reason I say that is because by the time the project is finished, it'll be too cold to pave, because if you pave in the cold, it doesn't stick and it doesn't adhere properly, so it may not be until next spring. But I can look and see what we can find out.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Heather. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to village council reports. We'll start with Councilman Boyd.
Yeah, so last Thursday, we had an FAC meeting, and we have two new members that were selected to join the team. One is John Kavanaugh, and the other one is Alex Kasilovich. Both have significant experience in the finance area and have a tremendous amount of acumen. The issue we talked about last Thursday was underutilized assets in the village, and one in particular, which is our parking utility, where there seems to be, I think, significant, and I think the FAC agrees, significant potential for the village to realize additional revenues without doing a heck of a lot. So we have a significant amount of spaces which are not being used in the eastern portion of the central business district, most notably North Walnut Street and Cottage Place, where we need to figure out how to fill those up because they're sitting there idle. One of the things we looked at and we'll continue to examine, and we'll work with the commercial district about differential pricing as it relates to the 3-block area in and around the train station, with potential increases in the permit pricing as well as metered parking. The analysis that we did in that 3-block area, just by increasing the revenues ever so slightly on the permits and also on the meters, we could realize well over $500,000 just by doing practically just by raising the price in a reasonable way, which is, I think, competitive with many of the other towns in this area. You know, one of the things that we did talk about with this morning with I'm blanking on, who did we meet with? Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce, I'm sorry. I apologize. Had a mind infarct there. So one of the things we need to examine is the employer-employee parking to determine what extent, or to the extent where they park and what they pay, with the intention of improving revenue streams from this particular constituency. I think Bernie and I had kind of thought about doing this weekend, is going around to each of the businesses, finding out from the employers who the employees, where they're parking, and what they're paying, and using some of that information to figure out where best to put those particular employees so that we can potentially free up spaces. So, anyways.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Deputy Mayor Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. I had two meetings yesterday downstairs in the garden room, Ridgewood Environmental Advisory Committee first, and then the Shade Tree Commission second. REACT met and kind of prioritized what we're going to look at for the rest of the year. Number one priority is always putting together Earth Day, and we do that in conjunction with the Ridgewood Conservancy for Public Lands and the Daffodil Festival. So it's been a great partnership, and it's been a great 2 years, and this year should be no different. It will also be great. I could almost assure you of that. Then we're going to look at bike racks. That was something that we started last year. It seems that there was interest, so some people were talking about it at the council level. REACT does have funding in place through years of donations, and we have so a little bit of funding. So there's a possibility that REACT could purchase 1 or 2 or 3 bike racks. The issue is where could we put them, and that's something that we're going to work on going forward. Basically, just finding a spot to put the bike racks that makes sense, and it will encourage people to use them. Then there's a movie and lecture series. Our first one is actually scheduled for November 9th. It'll be at 7 p.m. in the library. It'll be a conversation about climate change and the impact on trees. It'll be conducted by a professor from Rutgers whose name escapes me right now, but it's on November 9th, so I'll come back when it gets closer to the date and re-announce that with some more information. And working hand in hand with the recycling department also to get some information out about what should be recycled and how to recycle it. It's sort of an ongoing thing that REACT looks at. Then the Shade Tree Commission met, and we're in the process of going through the 5-year forestry management plan. We had a first draft sent to us, so there's still some things that we need to add, and there's still a little finessing to go back and forth with. So we're going to take that up and maybe have a couple special meetings, because the timeline to have this in front of the council, I believe, is by December. And then once it's our 5-year plan is approved here, then it has to go to the state DEP, and then they'll approve the plan. And then after that opens us up to various grants for tree-related issues, for replacements, for maintenance, and anything like that. And it helps cover volunteers who might want to help out with the Shade Tree Commission for liability purposes. And also, we were discussing a tree replacement program, seeing as how we lost hundreds of trees, more than 200 trees in each of the recent hurricanes in Sandy and Irene, and then through the sidewalk replacement program being conducted by our engineering department, we've also lost about 220 or so trees per year. So we're kicking around the idea of proposing a capital expenditure to help get us a little bit closer to replacing some of those trees, because right now we replace between the annual line item in the Parks and Rec budget about 25, and then through Adopt a Tree last year we had 10 or 11, and I think this year we have about 6. So if we're taking out more than 200 trees a year and we're planting 25, we're losing trees. So in order to combat that deficit and try and change it and move it into move it into the other direction, we're going to bring this to the full council once we have a proposal and a plan, and that should happen around budget season, so you guys can look forward to some more of that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman Walsh.
So I had my first Bergen League of Municipalities meeting yesterday, and the guest speakers were the prosecutor's office regarding bail reform and the county executive regarding kind of the state of the county. But the most impactful discussion was about bail reform, and all of the municipalities realize what an impact that bail reform could possibly have, or is going to have on the way we do our bail business, so to speak, here in the village. So there's a number of things that are going to have to, I don't know how much the former council had really delved into this, but as of January 1st, 2017, any defendant arrested on a complaint warrant is considered an eligible defendant, and they would be sent to the county jail, basically. So we're going to have a couple of issues with, we are going to have our judge basically 24/7 on call, because the judge is going to have to definitely see each of these people when they when they commit an offense that a judge would have to seek. Our police department is going to have extra resources, because in order to transport a person to the jail, you need 2 police officers. So you're going to essentially be taking 2 police officers out of duty to take this person to the jail. So they talked about perhaps working with the sheriff's department for transportation services if we can't figure a way to reorganize our police department hours. So obviously this is going to be a lengthy conversation with our police department. The other topic was that it's not going to apply to juveniles, but it is going to apply to those that are 18 and older. And, you know, we have residents that sometimes make poor choices that are 18 and over. They are now going to have to be transported to the jail for these serious offenses. So it's going to have a tremendous impact on the way that we have to budget, because this is going to be mandatory. We are not going to get around this by any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to make the recommendation to my council members that we really have to put this up in the forefront of our agendas and with the village manager to make sure that we're prepared for this, perhaps meeting with the judge, making sure that the timing is all right, because it is going to definitely have an impact. The county executive talked briefly about, because really the bail reform took up the whole meeting, and he had like 5 minutes to talk. Talked about some improvements to the parks, Van Saun, talking about perhaps putting ice skating at Van Saun and some other improvements that they're thinking about. And you know, it was well received by the people there, as long as it's not going to raise our county taxes any. So that was that. So I'm going to actually photocopy all, or have the village manager maybe scan this to send to. It's, you know, a lot of stuff to read through so that everybody on the council has it, so that our meeting about it will be productive. My citizen safety meeting is tomorrow evening, and then the Arts Council had its second meeting. The first topic that perhaps I can ask the village manager, it does not appear that the Arts Council had any money in a budget.
I don't believe so. They have a foundation, though.
Okay, so the council, so the Arts Council does not have any money, and will possibly need money to do some of these initiatives. So I don't know if
foundation for
Probably next year is what,
so we'll
next year's
have to,
budget.
okay,
That's my
so
guess.
there's no money laying around that we could put into the Arts Council.
Was there, I thought they had a fundraising arm. Is
They
that?
did the foundation.
So,
foundation.
yeah, so
How did that
they're
work?
separate, so there's no money in an Arts Council budget right now, so we need to budget for that next year. We've, obviously will be, when we do our resolutions, we have a new chair, Audrey Fink, and we have a new co-chair, Rosie McCooey. We have several new members that are actually going to be added to the list. Topics, you know, there's a lot of momentum, so some of the topics were an art salon series where a local artist would perhaps go to a location and, you know, have an art discussion with members of the village, you know, kind of a round table type of a discussion so that individuals can learn about art. One of the other ideas was an art app, kind of like the Pokemon app, where there would be art in the village, and you would get the app and kind of find the art in the village, so that, you know, maybe if you're walking down the street, it would ping based on a map that there's some art there that you could learn about. So great ideas. The other idea was a monster art, kind of like a monster truck, but it's art where you have all these artists come in and create art on the spot, and then you kind of do an art presentation based on what everybody's doing. So there's a lot of momentum. We need some funds to do some things, so we might have to do some sort of a fundraiser so that some of these other things can start to be worked on, maybe with some other services of the village, that maybe some IT services that we can use. So, but exciting stuff. So.
Great. Yep. Very good. Sounds exciting. Bail reform doesn't, but the rest of it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Hache.
So we had I attended my first Fields Committee meeting, and really the bulk of the meeting was focusing around Maple Park. This is the athletic field, that's field turf behind Graydon Pool. Quite shocking, actually, the condition of that field. I mean, you kind of walk through it, and it's in pretty bad shape. But when you realize what the situation is underneath, it's pretty scary. So the field currently is 12 years old. The warranty on that field was only for 8 years, and I think the usable life typically is about 10 years. So we've stretched this thing out as much as we could. There's an effort underway now for decompaction. The problem is that with this proximity to the brook, whenever we have these major weather events, there's a lot of flooding, and that flooding, you get all the silt going underneath, the conduits that run under the ground get basically compacted, get jammed up, and it creates a worse problem. We've been testing the hardness of the surface, and there's a certain test that is done. You test at different areas. It's basically dropping a ball down a tube, and it reads what the bounce is. There's a scale that they use for hardness. And I know the NFL doesn't play on any fields that are above 100 grade. We're at 185 is the average on that field. And what I suspect is that there's some parts of the field that are well above 200. So 200 is basically definitely not safe for anyone to play on. And in football and in soccer, what experts say is that 15% of concussions are caused actually by the impact of the head if you fall, hitting the surface, not from collisions with other players. So that's a concern, because right now, anything that's reading 200 or above, it's like playing on concrete covered with a carpet. There's also a big tear in the center part of the field. There's a 4-foot gash by 2 inches, I believe. That's a concern because someone's foot can get caught in there. You can have a knee injury, ankle injury. So we need to look at what to do with the field. This was, funded through private funds. And there was supposed to have been the village would have realized a $33,000 a year cost savings, because it's much cheaper to maintain a field turf than a traditional grass field. And that was set back in 2004, but the money was never set aside. So now we're going to have to play catch up, and the estimated cost to replace that field is $600,000 about. When we look at grant money, it's not what it used to be. We used to be able to get about $100,000 from grants for this kind of stuff. Right now, it's in the neighborhood of about $20,000 to $30,000. It's a concern. I've looked at the scheduling for the athletic fields. It's definitely used by all the different sports. There's also used for residents, for regular pickup games on Sundays and so on. But it's a concern, and it's something that we need to look at, because at the end of the day, it's our children playing on these fields, and we want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for children to play in. I'll also just add about the CBD Advisory Committee. I'm very happy, very excited that we finally went through the interview process, and we made the appointments. This is something that is really going to provide a good cross-section of our community, and to have broad participation from business owners, property owners, residents, and also from professional staff. And what we're looking to do is, these recommendations that will come out of the Advisory Committee, is to really be, exactly that, as a broad representation of what the vision is, shared vision from these different groups. And we want to make sure that it reflects that it's not focusing just particularly on the business community, on the residents, that we can get everybody to the table. I've always said we're very lucky to be in a town where we have so many talented and passionate people. So let's leverage that collective brain power, as I call it, for the benefit of the village. So I'm very excited about that. And just one small note on parking. I know that it's not formally on the agenda, but just always know that parking is never off our minds. We're always having discussions about parking. We met with the chamber this morning, and every question was really, the topic of the conversation was really centered around parking. There's a lot of stuff that we're working on now. Some of it is common sense stuff, what we call the low-hanging fruit. One of them is signage. Our largest municipal lot, 170 spaces, is Cottage Place. There's not one sign directing anyone on where that lot is. I suspect the fact that it's only 50% full at peak times during the day has something to do with the fact that we know where it is, people from out of town may not know where it is. Also, enforcement is another issue that we continue to work on. And we are, in the process of we have discussions with owners of underutilized lots in town. It's not that simple. We also have to make sure that the condition of those lots it's conducive to parking and doesn't put the village at any particular risk of liability. Lighting for one of the lots is a concern, so we need to look at that and how we pay for it and factor into, but, you know, the point is, we are working on it. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes related to parking that may not make it on the agenda, but it's an ongoing project. Even the exchange of ideas that we have among each other, you know, it's a constant thing. So, that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So just on that note, before I begin, I wanted to say that the meeting this morning with the Chamber of Commerce was a really robust discussion, and we were advised by the president of the chamber that it was actually one of the best meetings he had ever sat through, but he's actually said that to me before in other meetings I've been in, so I'm not really sure how sincere he was. But I really want to say that it was a lot of really great exchange of really great ideas and opportunities, and parking is always on our mind, but we're looking at the best way to exploit other opportunities throughout the village and really employ different opportunities and address this once and for all. And I'm also excited about the Central Business District Advisory Committee. I think we have a fabulous group of residents and business owners and property owners that we've put together. And just at the interviews alone, so many ideas came out of just the interviews. So the enthusiasm of those that were applying and showing an interest really gave us insight as to where this Central Business District Advisory Committee could go. And I think they're going to go really great places and do a lot of good downtown. So I wish them all the best of luck, and we look forward to hearing from them with future reports. So the 4th of July Committee met Monday evening at the Firehouse, and with Lee Gilson and Tara Masterson at the helm, as always, doing a spectacular job. The committee kicked off plans already for July 4th, 2017. Up for discussion and open for suggestions is the parade grand marshal. If anyone has any thoughts on that, please feel free to email me. Also the theme this year, we're looking for suggestions and ideas for a theme. And so we welcome those. And again, anyone has any ideas, just email me directly, and I'll share those with the 4th of July committee. We also discussed at the time Monday evening were different ticketing options, e-tickets, and other opportunities to have a more seamless ticket process, and the huge success of relocating the vendor food trucks out into the parking lot, which has given opportunity for the acoustics out in the field to be much better heard across the field by those people that are farther away. So that really has worked out quite nicely, and the vendors' trucks seem to be really enthusiastic about that as well. Community Access Network will meet tomorrow evening, 7:30 p.m. in the Senior Lounge right downstairs. The main discussion will be about Access Weekend, updates and information. All are welcome to attend. This is really shaping up to be an exciting weekend, fashion shows, parties, dances, and so we look forward to everyone's involvement, and we urge everyone to please join us and participate and think about volunteering, because it's really a great cause. Planning Board will be meeting Tuesday evening, September 20th, right here in this courtroom. Site plan applications will continue, and again, that's 7:30. As a tie-in, once again, to the proclamation for National Breast Cancer Awareness Week, the PBA Local 20 is sponsoring a fundraiser to help support breast cancer. I'm actually wearing one of these things. It's called a paracord bracelet, $5, downstairs at the police desk. And all proceeds will go to benefit cancer research. So that's anyone who's interested, right downstairs, $5. And finally, my report. One of the best things about being mayor and deputy mayor is that we get to officiate weddings. And we've had quite a number of those. We're really hopping at Village Hall. But last Sunday, I had the honor and privilege of officiating a very special wedding. And I'd like to wish all the happiness in the world to Councilman Hushay and Tina York, Mr. and Mrs. Hushay now. Congratulations.
Very much.
And all the happiness in the world. And with that, we will be moving on to our meeting. Okay.
Okay, there are no ordinances for Ridgewood Water. There is one resolution for Ridgewood Water. The following resolution, number 16-285, will be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the village council. It will be read by title only. award contract under state contract to Jeep Patriot vehicles. May I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes, yes, losing my voice. Okay, and with that, we'll begin our introduction of Ordinance 3548 to amend Chapter 265 Vehicles and Traffic Parking Regulations on Brookside Avenue. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3548.
I'll second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3548 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-69, Schedule 19, Time Limit Parking.
I move that ordinance 3548 be adopted on first reading and that October 12th, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Next introduction, 3549, repeal Ordinance 3532, audio-video recording of public meetings. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3549.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3549 by title?
An ordinance of the Village of Ridgewood amending Chapter 3 at Section 20 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood entitled Decorum to regulate the making of video and/or audio tape recordings at public meetings by repealing ordinance number 3532.
I move that Ordinance 3549 be adopted on first reading and that October 12th be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
I second the motion.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Introduction of 3550, amend Chapter 275 Yard Waste Regulations. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3550.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. So ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3550 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 275 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Yard Waste.
I move that Ordinance 3550 be adopted on first reading and that October 12th, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. The introduction of 3551 to amend Chapter 3 Administration of Government, Section 3-13A, Order of Business relating to public comment. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3551.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3551 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 3 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood at Chapter 3 Administration of Government at Section 3-13 Order of Business and Section 3-19 Manner of Addressing Council.
I move that ordinance 3551 be adopted on first reading and that October 12, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Introduction of 3552, various capital improvements at Northwest Bergen Central Dispatch for $26,000. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3552.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3552 by title?
An ordinance of the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $26,000 from capital fund balance for Village of Ridgewood's share for various capital improvements at Northwest Bergen Central Dispatch.
I move that Ordinance 3552 be adopted on first reading and that October 12, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
I second the motion.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Introduction of 3553, amend Ordinance 3547, sale of dogs and cats. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3553.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. So ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3553 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 105 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood entitled Animals to create a new section to regulate ban the sale of dog and cat mill animals in pet shops.
I move that ordinance 3553 be adopted on first reading and that October 12, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voight,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Introduction of Ordinance 3554, amend valet parking ordinance, Chestnut Street. I move the first reading of Ordinance 3554.
Second.
Okay. Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read Ordinance 3554 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood Vehicles and Traffic at Section 265-29 Parking Meter Zones Designated and at Section 265-72 Schedule 22 Loading Zones.
I move the ordinance 3554 be adopted on first reading and that October 12, 2016 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereof.
I second the motion.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Our next is a public hearing on 3542, amend Chapter 265 Vehicles and Traffic Violations and Penalties, increased parking ticket fines. I move the clerk read Ordinance 3542 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of Ordinance 3542?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic at Section 265-47, Violations and Penalties.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3542 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Public hearing on Ordinance 3543 to amend Chapter 265 Vehicles and Traffic, overnight parking restrictions. I move the clerk read Ordinance 3543 by title on second reading and the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Sedin?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of Ordinance 3543?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic at Section 265-18, Regulations Not Exclusive.
The public hearing is now open.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. If I recall correctly, this ordinance came about because the former village manager indicated that it was determined that the police department did not have the authority to authorize overnight parking, and this ordinance would in fact authorize the police department to have that power. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is, okay. And then I believe at some time during the public comment session at a previous meeting, a resident of the Heights Road area came up and indicated that they were quite concerned because people parked on the street overnight there every night of the year. And then I believe it was revealed that that also happens on Oak Street near the Garden Apartments, and also happens on East Ridgewood Avenue between North Maple and North Irving. So I guess my question is, what is going to happen with those instances now where there are locations in the community that people seem to park overnight every night of the year? Does this ordinance basically enable that, or is there another action going to be taken in reference to that to address the concerns that the person had in Heights Road? I guess if I recall correctly, in Heights Road, because the people were parked there every night, it made it difficult for people to back out of their driveways. There was some concern about transients in the neighborhood. I just don't know if this ordinance is intended to address the issue of every night of the year parking, or this was just to clean up the situation that the police weren't authorized to permit overnight parking.
Susan?
So my understanding, did you want to?
Well, no, I didn't really want me to answer that, but I don't know if it completely addresses it, but what it does is it sets a time limit and a process for people who want to park less than 5 nights, and then also a process for people who want to overnight park more than 5 nights. Now, it does, in that regard, address it. Whether or not it resolves it as a matter of enforcement is a different issue, but it does provide for a process for people who want to park in excess of 5 nights. So that's what has to be done.
And what is that process?
Well, as it says in here, there is all requests for waivers up to 5 nights will be considered upon the proper information
describing a vehicle location, color being identified. All waivers in excess of 5 nights will be individually reviewed upon the submittal of the required information. All requests have to be made through central dispatch. So it appears that there is going to be requests for certain documentation for anybody who wants to park for in excess of 5 nights. Now, I don't know whether it was specifically meant to address it, but it does address those who want to park for more than 5 nights overnight.
Okay, so again, this seems to permit the police department to authorize it, and after that, I guess it's going to be an enforcement issue, and...
Seems like it, but yeah, it does.
You know, and I think that one of the things that we would look at maybe at some point down the road is to limit how many nights someone actually can park, because this resolved the issue if somebody had, for instance, college students come home and they needed to use, now they no longer, for whatever reason, had space in their driveway for those extra vehicles, and so someone was home for maybe a couple of weeks and it resolved that issue. But under no circumstance is it intended to allow parking on a regular basis every single night, as was what was going on Heights and, it's Heights, right, and Oak. So it's not intended to do that, and I suppose at some point we'll have to go back and maybe look at whether or not we're going to cap that number and say this is the maximum number you'll be permitted to do.
Okay. If you recall, when there was some discussion about Permanda Walk, I made the comment that the zoning board, the planning board are authorizing buildings to be built, and not enough parking spaces are made available at those buildings. So that's why we have this situation now on Oak Street, Heights, East Ridgewood Avenue. So in the future, we really need to take a very close look at who's going to be occupying buildings and get a realistic count on the number of cars that are going to be there, because otherwise we're going to have situations like this. It just makes the parking situation worse. Now, some of you on the planning board, I don't know if there are any of you on the Board of Adjustment, but we've really got to do a better job of assessing the number of cars that are going to be at a facility before we give the old rubber stamp that it's okay to build.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just make one other comment. So those that live in apartments can get a overnight parking permit monthly. So for anybody that lives in an apartment, has a car that doesn't have a spot, they can have an overnight parking spot in one of our lots in the evening. So I would imagine that the owners of the properties should be notifying their residents that they shouldn't be parking on the street on a regular basis, that they should be getting this permit, and then would be able to park.
And I think that was a part of the conversation, because that seemed to be maybe inconvenient for some, and so, but it became quite abusive, and so it forced us to kind of take a look at this.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, let's just see. So I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3543 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
I second the motion.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Public hearing on ordinance 3544 to amend valet parking ordinances. I move the clerk read ordinance 3544 by title on second reading, and the public hearing thereon be opened.
Second.
Hache?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Newton?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3544?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-29, parking meter zones designated, and at Section 265-69, Schedule 19, time limit parking, and at Section 265-72, Schedule 22, loading zones.
Okay. The public hearing is now open.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. My question is, how does 3544 differ from 3554, which was introduced tonight? It seems that they both deal with Chestnut Street, so I guess I'm a bit confused. Have one ordinance this week, another ordinance next month?
One of them adds, I think the new one we're doing adds additional spaces for Novo. And then also, this one that is having the public hearing also includes Oak Street to allow additional spots for Park West. So there is a differentiation.
So the one next month adds another zone
for another
No,
restaurant?
Tonight, the one right now that we're hearing, the public hearing, includes Oak Street. Which
Okay.
adds a couple more spaces, I believe, for Park West to pull in more directly.
Okay, so they're two different ordinances dealing with two different things. Okay. I'm very surprised that Mr. Rudishauser isn't here tonight because he's the one who drafted this ordinance, and he made a statement last week or the week before when he talked about valet parking, and it was that they were doing observations of the valet parkers, and they determined that there was one valet service that was stacking cars in the Chestnut Street lot. So I wanted to ask a question at that time, but I didn't. I saved it for tonight, and I'm trying to figure out what penalty was applied to the person who was caught stacking cars in the Chestnut Street lot, which I don't believe they are supposed to do. Was it just a slap on the hand, or was there a fine? Because if somebody was caught doing something that they were not supposed to do, we should just not walk away from it. And he did make that statement that a valet was caught stacking cars in the Chestnut Street lot, which is prohibited. So what happened?
I think you have to ask Mr. Rudishauser. We don't know.
He's not here.
Yeah, I know, so
Nobody
you
knows.
can call him tomorrow, probably. He's back from, he was away, so you could probably call him.
Calling him gets nowhere. I'll send an email to the mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right.
To me.
Great. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Hold on one sec. Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3544 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Public hearing on ordinance 3545 to amend Chapter 249, Streets and Sidewalks, increase fines for paving moratorium violations. I move the clerk read ordinance 3545 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Will the clerk please read title of ordinance 3545?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 249 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Streets and Sidewalks, at Section 249-44, General Considerations.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3545 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
I second the motion.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. The public hearing on ordinance 3546. I move the clerk read ordinance 3546 by title in the second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3546?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
I move the public hearing is now open. Sorry. Oh, okay. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3546 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Public hearing on ordinance 3547 to regulate the ban the sale of dog and cat mill animals in pet shops. I move the clerk read ordinance 3547 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3547?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 105 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood entitled Animals to create a new section to regulate ban the sale of dog and cat mill animals in pet shops.
Great. This ordinance will be defeated due to additional information given to the Village Council on this topic. Ordinance 3553, which was introduced this evening, is the amended version of this ordinance. The public hearing is now open. Okay. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Ashe,
Yes.
Eden,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Newton.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3547 be defeated.
Second.
Positive yes vote is to defeat. Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Newton.
Yes. And with that, we go to resolutions.
Yes, the following resolutions numbered 16-259 through 16-284, with the exception of Resolution 16-263, 16-277, and 16-278, which have been removed from the agenda, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. They will be read by title only. Title 59, Approval, Laboratory Analysis Services. Award Contract, Laboratory Analysis Services, Grading Pool and Water Pollution Control Facility. Title 59, Approval, Sodium Bisulfite and Sodium Hypochlorite Solutions. Award Contract, Sodium Bisulfite and Sodium Hypochlorite Solutions, Water Pollution Control Facility. Reject bid, Property Maintenance Services. Award Contract under State Contract, Ford F-350 Pickup Truck, Traffic and Signal. Award Contract under State Contract, Ford F-350 Pickup Truck, Traffic and Signal. Award Contract under State Contract, Electronic Equipment, Software and Computer Upgrades. Award Contract under National Joint Powers Alliance, Brush Chipper for the Parks Department. Award Contract under National Joint Powers Alliance, Street Sweeper for the Streets Department. Award Contract under the Education Services Commission of New Jersey Contract, 2 stump grinders for the Parks Department. Award Extraordinary and Specifiable Services Contract, blower motor for the Water Pollution Control Facility. Authorize extension of contract leasing and maintenance program for police cars. Declare property surplus, Parks Department dump truck. Amend 2016 capital budget for Northwest Bergen County Central Dispatch capital improvements. Approve shared services agreement, Child Health Clinic with Glen Rock and Fairlawn. Reject bid, janitorial services. Authorize cleaning of Gypsy Pond, Kings Pond Park by the Ridgewood Wildscape Association and partners. Establish annual service charge and payment for guarantee bond for Ridgewood Senior Citizen Housing Corporation and guarantee of payment of revenue bonds. Authorize letter to be sent to the Planning Board for the review of ordinances 3489, 3490, 3491, and 3492. Appointments to Financial Advisory Committee. Appointments to Central Business District Advisory Committee, and appointments to Ridgewood Arts Council. Certain names on these have been removed. Central Business District Advisory Committee, Tony Damiano has been removed, and the Ridgewood Arts Council, Mary Jane Shinazuka and Kim Reese have been removed. May I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Newton.
Yes. And with that, we'll go back to public comments. Once again, not to exceed 5 minutes per person.
Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. I have a question about PSC&G's work on Monday. Is this an emergency? Is this emergency work that's being done?
It's not, it's
not
planned
emergency work.
Planned work.
How many parking spaces are being taken up? Do we know that? With equipment, et
It's
cetera?
different sections of the street at different, on different days, so I don't know that.
Okay. I'm going to guess it's probably half the spaces, which are about 45. If this is not an emergency, and they are saying this work is to be taking place from now until November, we know that there's a good chance it's going to go into December. And October, we start fourth quarter. This is exactly what I meant earlier in the day. And Ramon, if you're doing this committee, your committee needs to really be aware of this. You don't touch the CBD in the fourth quarter unless it's an emergency. So I suggest having PSC&G do the work in first, second, or third quarter, because fourth quarter can make or break a business. And as I said, if they're doing it from now until November, you know there's a good chance it's going over till December. So I suggest it be postponed if it's not an emergency. Thank you. Any comment?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Linda McNamara, 575 Knickerbocker Road. I was going to come first a week ago to say how wonderful the meeting went and how happy I was with all the things that had happened, including the bricks that you're not going to replace at Van Nest. And And I'm sitting at home taking my minutes with my little cat on my lap, and I'm getting more and more upset. I feel like everything old is new again. Like I'm listening to Mike talk about the replacement program. And years ago, I came because we had reduced our shade tree commission from 9 to 3. And when we did that, we almost decimated that department, and we made the work they had to do so overwhelmingly impossible. And I'm really glad to hear that you addressed it. And I, too, was going to ask if there could be a municipal funding in some way to help the volunteers, because I don't think it can be done strictly by volunteers. And then I was feeling better again. And then I heard Rourke Hallaby speak about Shedler, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I'm almost feeling like, but I don't know if you're entitled to a wrong opinion. And when I look at Shedler, and I'm over there regularly for a whole lot of different reasons, but birds are foresting and living near highways now. Their habitats are being destroyed. And yes, there were 3 bald eagles in the area, and there's a couple of other animals, but that's besides the point. A lot of broken bottles, or if there are, I don't see them. If there's broken bottles and there's plastic bottles, isn't that the easiest cleanup you could ever do? I can't think of anything. You get the Girl Scout troops, the Boy Scouts, get the Wildscape. I mean, there's so many volunteers that wouldn't mind a nice day cleaning up the area. And as a friend of Isabel Altano, she's worked tirelessly for this. And I think historical preservation is a wonderful thing. And I even thought the realtors could say, you know, Ridgewood, home of the Shedler-Zabriskie house. You know, things like that really add to the character of a neighborhood. And all I can say is that I hope you didn't listen to him. Okay. And I like him. I'm not saying anything. I'll probably see him tomorrow at a meeting, but it's just, what can I say? I'm sure he would disagree with me. And then, you know, the parking I know is an issue. And I was talking to somebody actually today. In 2007, I think just before the new council came on, there was a proposal to do something at Walnut Street, which would include like a strip mall, apartments, and parking. And then I remember somebody talking about that on the Franklin Avenue side, there would be an indentation, like a mini park. And I thought it sounded so great. You know, I know times have changed. But I was around when the Hudson Street Firehouse came down, and, you know, we were for keeping the firehouse because the firemen at the time wanted to keep it. And so when it came down, we knew it was going to be for parking. But now look what you've got. You've got these 2 lots there that are underutilized. I guess they hold about 150 slots. So I'm one of the people who would like to see maybe a second tier there and to do something at Walnut Street for the central business people and for the shoppers. I don't know any shoppers that are going to go up to Hudson Street and park. They're going to park, you know, midway, and I don't know, maybe it might be more money, I don't know, but if we're going to do something, I'd like it to be something that we can all live with and maybe benefit everybody. And finally, Ramon, I didn't want to bring this up because I worked tirelessly against artificial turf back in 2005 to 2009. I have so much information. I have a daughter who played, you know, college soccer for 4 years. I went to every game. Nobody, the girls now, the Women's Soccer Association nationally is fighting against having to play on artificial turf because of the hardness factor and the heat factor. But the one thing I wanted to say to everybody, the number one thing they said when they were talking about Maple Field was, it was never made to be put in a floodplain. It was just never made to be put in a floodplain. And I know we have limited space, but before we decide to replace it with more artificial turf, I just want to say one thing. I heard you say the $33,000 to maintain it, but when I was working at Parks and Rec back then, Maple Field cost at the time, they maintained the grass Maple Field at $11,000 a year. That was a little under budget and probably wasn't serving, you know, that area in the best way. But we all played there, all the kids played there, and I don't know, I just don't see it as the place for artificial turf. It's going to flood again. There's going to be, I remember seeing the workers there picking up little grass that was growing in between the artificial tufts because, you know, every time the silt would come over. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank
Now I'm
you.
going to go home and
You can go home.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I have a question about parking for employees. Isn't there someplace like a cottage where people can park all day if you work an 8-hour shift?
There is.
I thought, I mean, I don't work in town, but I remember there is. So
Yes.
there is a place where
Yes.
employees can park. It's not
Exactly.
that they can't. So if somebody chooses to drive around every 4 hours for 15 minutes, it's probably because they're trying to get a spot super close to where they work rather than walking 2 or 3 blocks. But
Yes.
parking is available. Thank you.
Hi, Siobhan Cran-Winograd, 274 Ivy Place. To make everybody laugh, Linda, my timekeeper. My daughter. So everybody, it has a 1 minute, 3 minute, and a 5 minute, and honestly, it is stressful. I like the soothing effect, and it keeps me in check, so I can speak as fast as I need to, or slow it down a bit. Heather, I'm going to leave it for you to get a laugh out of you. So I'm here to talk about parks as well, but in 2 parts and 2 totally separate things. So for the past several years, I've been sitting here, and the parks are always a big topic of discussion. And I love our parks. I'm a heavy user of the parks. I spend an enormous amount of time in parks within Bergen County because I have 2 kids who are outside all the time. And I'm going to speak about parks collectively, Board of Ed and Village combined. I know they're separate, but to the taxpayer, it's all our dollars going one place. And over the past couple of years, I've heard a lot going on with the land utilization, and I think all the ideas are good. I really do. I think Shedler's great, Foley's behind it. I think Kings Pond, that's my old neighborhood. Love it, love it, love it. And the list just seems a little incomplete because everything's great and everything has a price tag. So right now, you have Shedler, right? The house is in, it appears, which is okay, which means baseball needs to go someplace else, which should probably be lower Hawes, which is why we should talk to the Board of Ed. You've got Kings Pond. We have our Duck Pond, which I understand is Bergen County. But they're all not looking as great as they could. And that doesn't mean they look bad. There's just a lot of opportunity left. Then there's Maple. Maple, if you can get the rest of this year out, it's deflated. It's run its course. It's a turf field. I, too, have soccer players. I have mixed opinions about the turf as a parent. I have to be honest about that. I understand the utilization. But all those things needed to be added together and sort of presented, in my opinion, as one collective whole and let the public weigh in. The other big part of this is I'm a big open space adjacent property, and I know we have the money, but we really need to be looking at the existing parks and other parcels, because that's something that I think we could increase our park space through adjacent property acquisitions. And lastly, the only other area that we never really discuss is it's probably the last large parcel of land on the way to Sicilian Sun in Hohokus. And I know that's privately held, but that should really be being discussed as well, because it's a large parcel of land that we could, not now, but if money were to be allocated, we could look into buying that from whoever was willing to sell it. The second part of this, and I know I'm good, is I think that the way we have it set up with the people who use our fields is limited. And I think that for 2 years, a group of us, myself included, have been trying to implement a checklist related to best practices related to the groups that use our fields. It's a very benign list. I can't imagine why there would be any type of pushback, and yet there is. This list really is there to supplement the field's use policy, and it's to ensure that the sports groups or the people using our lands are following best practices. This is a big problem with youth sports, what's going on. There's been a series in the New York Times, there's been articles written, and there's 2 problems. One, some of these organizations are no longer acting in the best interests of the kids, and 2, like it or not, there's a ton of money being funneled through these private entities. I can send you the list if you want. I just can't, we've never really gotten a response as to why it hasn't been implemented, and I think if we're going to be looking at the land and what we want to do with it in a positive, best practice way, we should be looking at this list and saying to the people who are using it most heavily, these things need to be met. I don't think you guys should be stepping into charitable businesses and how they run it, but I do think you should be demanding that a list of prerequisites are met. And, I'm sort of looking for how to make that list come to fruition. We've submitted it. I haven't heard back on it. Not to you guys, not the 5 of you. And it seems to be stuck in, there's no resistance, but it's not happening. So those are my 2 points, and now everybody looks confused.
Real quick, Siobhan, because the list just has me a little confused. Who submitted the list and who's organizing it?
Okay, so as a byproduct of the civility campaign, which I went to, honestly, to be a little adversarial on my own, I went to it. There was recommendations made from a small group of citizens, and, you know, I can talk to them and see if they want to have their names, but I was one of them. And I said that this list would make the practices better, and I submitted it. It's been submitted. Tim has seen it, and we really wanted it included in the Parks and Recs document. You know, that this is a checklist. And the general idea, before I get into any of the drama of it, is that there's many people using our land. You know, there's many rules, and that's a good thing, because that's a value of being a citizen. And assuming all the regular things are met, residency requirement, blah, blah, blah. As we begin to look at this, and you're going to want to do a lot with the land, and you're going to need to privately fundraise, because you're going to need to. I mean, if we really want to do big things, we're going to need to do both. That we should have the checklist, and it should be a requirement.
So your time is up, but why don't you just send the list to us, and then we can kind of take a look at it, because that's the best way to have it implemented if there's any, you know, usefulness to it. So, which I'm sure there is, but it would be helpful if you just emailed it to us. Okay.
And I want to be clear, it's not for the village. It's more like a Sarbanes, like you've done this is your list, and you say these things are here, and go at it. But without the list, that's it.
Well, just send it off and we'll take a look. Thank you.
Can I leave this for Heather?
By the way, it's actually calibrated. It was exactly 5 minutes.
I was like compelled to
Watching
watch.
it, yeah, I'm like,
You can laugh, but it does, you guys are all public speakers, it does calm everybody down. Linda, I thought I'd make you laugh. And if you don't want to use it, you don't have to flip it over.
Are you leaving that there forever now?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Mr. Claude.
Good evening.
Good evening, Claude Beanstock, 39-11B, Broadway, Fairlawn. My comments will be very brief, and I don't want to get into a personnel issue. I read about the resignation of Village Manager Roberts Sonnenfeld. I don't think I should comment on it because this is a personal matter. I just read about it in the record. I just want something that I have to say. The people of Ridgewood can be very, very proud of the leadership of this council and the previous council. The amazing, terrific, honest job of integrity that you all are doing, the people can definitely be very, very proud. You have tough decisions to make, and it's not easy. I could not do a better job in government. So do what you have to do for the entire community. Make the tough decisions, and I congratulate all the winners in the race for council. And congratulations, best wishes to Heather Maylander, and thank you for all the hard work you've been doing all these years. I really appreciate it. I just want to wish you all the best, and the decisions you make are not easy, and the last thing that the government, any government needs is me to be a roadblock, to me to be a hindrance and creating problems and obstacles. That's not my style. If anything, I appreciate and grateful for everything you do.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Oh.
Yeah, hi, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I noticed that there is a notation on the village's website that Village Hall and the stable are closed at 3:30 p.m. this coming Friday, but there's no indication as to the reason for that. So I'm just wondering why Village Hall and the stable are closing at 3:30 this Friday.
Picnic.
There's a
Staff party.
employee picnic.
Oh, okay, that explains that. The other comment I'd like to make is that I think I mentioned last week or sometime this summer that the business about the concrete that was dumped reportedly or allegedly illegally or unlawfully up at the Lakeview composting site still bothers me, that there's been no public revelation as to what happened up there, and you continue to award contracts to people who are engaged in the concrete business. And my concern is that one of them may have been involved in the dumping of concrete and asphalt at this facility. So in the absence of there being any public discussion or revelation about it, I filed a couple of Oprah requests about it, and I'm still waiting for the one to come back from the clerk's office, but I did get a response today from the police department, from my Oprah request from the police department, and the only thing that the police department is saying at this time is that they've told me the date that they got the initial complaint, they've told me the officer's name who responded to the complaint, they've indicated to me what the case number is for the case, and attached a name to it. All other information is being kept confidential at this time for some reason that I don't know, and I won't know until tomorrow until I speak to the police chief, who I've been directed to speak to. So again, this concerns me, that something happened on July 17th, 2015. The DEP came in and issued a notice of violation to the village of Ridgewood, but the public is still being kept in the dark in terms of what happened and who was responsible. So I'm hoping now with the change in leadership, at least at the manager's level, that the council does begin to take this a little bit seriously and try to supply some information to the public about what happened, who was responsible, and what was being done to the person or persons who did this. I'm not sure what fine was levied to the village. I'm waiting for that information to come back from the Oprah from Heather's office. But again, the main thing that concerns me is that if there was a contractor involved, I want to make sure that you are not awarding any business to a contractor who is involved in this. And hopefully within the next 5 days, I know something more. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Hello.
Marisol Romero?
Just pull it down. Yeah,
Thanks. Marisol Romero, 258 Styling Avenue. My apologies, I'm not used to coming to the meetings where it runs so fast in the beginning with all the ordinances. So am I allowed to make a comment about the leaf pickup?
Sure.
Sure, yes.
Whatever
okay.
you want.
I just wanted to, this is based on my experience, because I know leaf pickup is coming sooner than later. So I pick up one child at Trevelle and another at Ridge. Yeah. And last fall, and this is why I was asking, if this year you could consider placing a priority on the removal of the leaf piles from the streets surrounding the school, because last fall it was horrible. Like, for example, when I was trying to pick up my daughter from Trevelle, spaces are so limited around that area, and I'm sure it's not the only elementary school that goes through this, that like a lot of spots that were usually used for parking were being taken up by the piles of leaves. So I was just requesting if there's a way to maybe put a priority on picking up leaves in those streets surrounding the schools.
Yeah, we do try to clear them in those areas as quickly as we can, and the same with snow. And there are certain areas of town they're in each day or each week, and so those are the areas that get picked up. Last year we had a situation where a lot of leaves came down all at once. Right. And in that instance, it took a while for us and our crews to catch up. But
because last fall was painful because it was a couple of weeks of piles of leaves, and
right.
When you're dealing with like multiple kids in the car and the weather is not agreeable, you're parking 3 or 4 blocks away in some cases.
Yeah, we are working on it. We do have we've had a couple of leaf forums, and we also have a leaf meeting coming up next week. We'll address that again at that meeting, and hopefully we'll have some kind of resolution. But again, unfortunately, we don't have any control as to when the leaves fall, and I do recall that last fall, they did come down all at once.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. Okay, I appreciate it, but just thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Marisol. Thank you.
Heather, just to make a comment on that, is on Bogart Avenue, on the school side, I've noticed that the houses on I guess it's on the east side, have their landscapers put the leaves on the school side. Is there a way that we can require those homes and their landscaping crews to put the leaves in front of their house as opposed to in front of the school, that everybody drives over the leaves I mean, for all the
Yeah,
schools
I'll-
for that matter, or when you put your leaves out, you're not really supposed to put them on the other side of the street. They're supposed to be in front of your house.
Correct.
And I've noticed there that they've been putting them, they're landscaped.
That's something we'll look into as well, yes.
Great, thanks. And with that, we'll have a resolution to go into closed session.
Be resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on September 14th, 2016 at 8 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and the said closed session be held in the caucus room at the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include RCRD litigation, town garage property, and personnel matters to include village manager search. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 at sec. And be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Here, take magnets.